We are going to Washington, D.C., and we are going to drain the swamp. I see this young boy here, and he's screaming, "Drain the swamp." He's this big. How cute.
Well, swamp is not drained. Now, the montage only means one thing: time to put on the waders and check back in on that promise to get rid of all the lobbyists and all the idea that this was an insider's game in D.C. Here's how this looks today. Okay, still swampy. I think you get the analogy here. And now even swampier. For more, let's bring in political swamper Andrew Whitman here. You know, we're kidding here, but you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, that's why we're going to have to resort to some kidding.
Right?
It's so pervasive and so deep, and it's a little depressing to go through it all, Rich. So first of all, thanks for this assignment. These stories are so frustrating to cover. Well, here's a sneak peek of me just after putting this assignment together this afternoon.
Thanks. I needed that.
Yeah, you have no idea. All right, so back to the swamp, and let's check in on the swampster currently on the hottest of hot seats. That would be EPA Chief Scott Pruitt. Pruitt, you'll recall, flies first class and tried to fly by private jet to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars because he claims he gets threats, better known as people telling him what a bad job he's doing. Pruitt also snagged himself a Capitol Hill condo for $50 a night, which is absurdly below market value, thanks to the wife of a lobbyist who does business with the EPA. Pruitt also wanted a security team to use lights and sirens when he was late for dinner in D.C., and he schedules quote-unquote official business near his home in Oklahoma most weekends, so the government will pay for his trips home. But that's apparently not enough in the Trump swamp. Add to that now Pruitt's $10,000 a year car lease, complete with bulletproof seat covers. I'll let you pause for a moment to consider why anyone would want or need bulletproof seat covers. Okay, Pruitt also spent $3,000 for an unapproved sweep of his office for listening devices. Not surprisingly, none were found. And yet Pruitt still has a job, in part because of his commitment to doing whatever he can to stop the Environmental Protection Agency from, protecting the environment. And because Trump reportedly sees Pruitt as a possible replacement for Jeff Sessions, should Trump decide to fire Sessions. Does anybody really doubt Pruitt as Attorney General wouldn't fire Robert Mueller in about 30 seconds flat? But the worm may now be turning on Pruitt. That's not an environmental reference, although it could be. Pruitt has a date before a pair of House subcommittees this week as 4 Republican House members, including New Jersey's Frank Lo-Biondo, are now calling for him to resign. That will be a must-watch hearing. And Pruitt is only one member of this Trumpian swamp ecosystem. We could replay all the ethical lapses from others in the Trump administration, like Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, who also has expensive taste in plane rides, who has a personal flag flown when he's in his office in D.C. and is having his own keepsake coin minted with his name on it, or continues to shrink protected federal lands everywhere, except his home state of Montana, where he may want to run for governor. Or remind you of HUD Secretary Ben Carson's now canceled $31,000 dinette set, or that he blamed that fiasco on his wife. That's nice. Or Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and his wife, who, let's be frankly, doing their best impressions of Bond villains, flew to Fort Knox to play with the gold and watch the eclipse, while Mrs. Bond villain lashed out at critics online. Just some of their issues. Or the president himself, who enriches himself renting space to the RNC at Trump Tower and charging the Secret Service for golf carts when he plays at his own courses, the courses he owns. It is exhausting just to keep up with it all. So to keep things moving, we thought we'd introduce you to 2 new members of the Swamp Meet. Meet Robert Lighthizer. He is Trump's U.S. trade representative, whose name I cannot pronounce. He's one of the men responsible for tariffs and possible trade war with China, but that's not why you need to know who he is. Lighthizer redecorated 2 of his offices and billed taxpayers almost $1 million, but there's even more to the story. He blamed the $1 million renovations on President Obama. His team claims the spending is part of a plan that began under the former president. Former Obama staffers called that answer laughable in what can only be described as a huge understatement. And then there's Ronnie Jackson. This, not so much the swamp, but just a little sad. He's the White House physician who, after Trump's physical exam, stopped just short of comparing Trump's physique to that of Superman. His reward, Trump nominated to head up the VA despite Jackson being super unqualified. But Dr. Ronnie may be headed to quarantine. after reports accused Jackson of excessive drinking on the job, improperly dispensing medications, and fostering a hostile work environment. By the way, that work environment, the White House Medical Office. Jackson's confirmation hearing has now been postponed, and while the White House continues to back him, the president today seemed to give Jackson wiggle room to back out of the job if he wants, and he may want to. Here's how Jackson responded, or rather didn't respond, when asked about those allegations today.
Can you say anything at all about these allegations that have come out against you in the last few days?
No, I'll just say that I was looking forward to the hearing tomorrow. Kind of disappointed that it's been postponed, but I'm looking forward to getting a reschedule and answering everybody's questions.
You've seen the allegations, a hostile work environment, allegations about potentially drinking on the job, over-prescribing medications. Are you saying those are categorically untrue?
I'm saying I'm looking forward to the hearing so we can sit down and I can explain everything to everyone and answer all the senator's questions.
That's what we would call, Rich, not a denial, not even in the same zip code as a denial.
You drew the short straw, Richard. So
I'm sure there's an explanation for this.
okay, no, but I'm being serious about one thing. Who do you blame more for this? The clowns themselves? I mean, Pruitt. Apparently, everybody in not just the administration, but every Republican on the Hill is begging the White House to cut this guy loose, but the only one who won't do it is the president. And there's all the other guys with him that are either not ready for prime time or seemingly got the directive, do whatever you want. You know, buy any dinette set, redesign your office, fly first class wherever you go. What do you blame the boss? Which apparently Dr. Jackson here, okay, that they didn't do any due diligence on this guy. And within 24 hours, everybody else knew the story. So either they're not vetting, or they're sending the message they don't care what's in the background, that he compliments the president and that's enough. Is it the president's fault, or is it these individual clowns' fault that they didn't get the message? Forget about not draining the swamp here. They're the worst actors.
Yeah. So a few things. One, the president obviously deserves and can pick whatever cabinet he wants, first of all. Secondly, the president, I think...
But no, is that true? Wait a second. Is it true that you, at the end, they're representative of the people, and they represent the public? We, the taxpayer, fund their departments, and they're supposed to represent our interests.
And the president gets to pick his team, whatever team he wants.
Shouldn't they have to be qualified?
Well, that's why there's a confirmation process, too.
For some of them.
Yes, for some, but not all. But yes, there's a confirmation process to deal with qualifications. So there is some checks and balances.
But Richard,
secondly,
you're a political guy, and my question is, there is, like in all sports, unforced errors and forced errors. Some things you can't help. These are avoidable things. He could have just stayed the White House position. They took a guy that clearly had no experience running something as significant as the VA, the second biggest department we have in this country. Not only did he not have the qualifications, but in any rudimentary background check, they would have said he never could have been confirmed, and more than that, it was going to be an embarrassment for the White House. Why can't they do their basic homework?
But again, the president has to pick whoever he wants, whether or not he wants, whether or not they have qualifications.
Don't you think you deserve a qualified guy to run your veterans
That's why
care?
Absolutely. That's why there is a confirmation process there in place. So there is a check and balances. But let's not get away from the fact that the president can pick who he wants, and he likes to pick people who are intelligent and loyal, it seems like.
But that is
those are very important factors.
That is getting us, Richard, respectfully, away from the norms that we've had when these kinds of nominations have been announced in the past.
This administration isn't
No, this I think that's the point of the segment to a large degree. First of all, the Ronnie Jackson nomination caught everybody off guard. It seemed like it was something impulsive from the president, and it was another one of these situations where it appears as though the White House scrambled behind him in the wake of that decision. And only now are we finding out about some of the issues that Ronnie Jackson has had while in office. But, I mean, clearly there's not any vetting going on, or there's not a lot of vetting going on, or you would have seen some of the tendencies. The Scott Pruitt stuff, there was a deep dive in the Times this weekend that a lot of this was known about him, or that kind of approach was known about him in Oklahoma in his time serving as Attorney General and in other positions in state government there. A vetting system, a proper vetting system that we'd had with previous presidents would have discovered that sort of tendency and might have discouraged the White House from nominating somebody like Pruitt for the position. The difference being, in the past, if Barack Obama had nominated somebody this unqualified, or somebody with this many black marks on his record, there would have been some damage done to the Obama administration, and in a way that doesn't seem to happen to Trump.
Yeah. And to that point, Scott, Richard's right. Every president of every party can pick who they want. But this is the head of the VA. We've talked in this program over the years under both and all administrations about the shortfalls in care that veterans deserve and aren't getting, okay? And I'm talking to a guy who was very involved in this subject in Rockland County. And in fact, we talked recently about someone who dedicated his life, is now no longer with us, to this. The idea that a White House physician who's never run a lemonade stand, let alone an agency this size, it's not just the president's choice. There's consequences to these things. Forget about the political damage he's doing to himself and his administration. But the idea that just because I can, I will, and then he turns around and he says it's disgusting and all these, what they're asking. Don't you think we should know if the guy's getting banged up at work? And, you know, and other things, that he's loose with prescriptions and he's going to be head of the VA? Like, these are legitimate questions. There is harm involved here.
Well, I mean, I think that's really the point, that a chief executive has to control his administration. You can put who you want there. Theoretically, you've done the background check. Even at the local levels, you do a background check. You double check to make sure. And the persons who serve the president need to be responsible to let him know, this guy's not going to fly. He doesn't have this, or he doesn't have that, or here's his background.
Do you think the people that are supposed to do this have never run for county sheriff, as the expression goes? Or do you think they take the cue from the boss to say, we're all flying by the seat of our pants? Just go with it. It's a news cycle.
I don't think they had the right people serving, to be honest with you, in the White House. That's my own view. That they don't have enough people to do some of these things. Because in the final analysis, if these guys, Pruitt and these groups, they can't do that. It is violation of the taxpayer and government rules and laws. It's not. This is not something that's you know, oh, maybe we should do this. All those things should be covered by an executive, that is the deputies, the people who work there, to make sure. And if you don't do anything else, you send out a memo and say, don't do this stuff.
Right.
You can't buy personal furniture. You can't.
My point on that one, Andrew, is you just touched on something. Do you imagine if members, multiple members of the Obama administration, or pick any other administration, repeatedly were self-enriching themselves or decorating offices to absurd numbers with taxpayer money? The head explosions that would be going on at a fair and balanced location and everything else. I've never seen anything like this.
1 would have been a scandal, 2 would have been a major scandal, 3 would have been there's something corrupt or there's something clearly wrong with the person who's making these decisions. One last point on all this. Trump campaigned on taking care of veterans. He would tell every crowd, we're going to take care of our veterans in ways you've never seen before, believe me, etc. And just the nomination of Jackson seems to be, counter to the spirit of that.
I don't think he's going to get approved.
I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to go to Congress at this point.
Yep. Coming up next, man accused of killing 4 people in Tennessee at a Waffle House once had his guns taken away by the cops, but he was able to get them back. He had red flags all over the place, so why is it so hard to keep guns out of the hands of clearly disturbed people? Can't we even agree that we need to do that?